men accused of murdering their families. Cops say Marriage went on a Thanksgiving Day rampage, killing 4 people, his 2 sisters, his aunt, and a 6-year-old cousin. Turner's accused of slashing the throats of his wife and his mother-in-law, just steps away from where his 4 children slept. These men had become monsters who thought they'd gotten away with these murders. And they might have if not for your tips that helped put them both behind bars. Well, guess what? We've got another creep wanted for killing his family, including a promising young woman who is getting ready to celebrate a very big day.
We welcome you to the commencement services for the graduating class of 2020.
Seniors and parents shine proudly. It's the beginning of a new chapter in the lives of more than 200 graduates at Griffin High School, located just south of Atlanta. One of those students, Shaylinda Sanders, had worked exceptionally hard to make it to this day.
We weren't too sure if she was gonna make it, but when it got down to the wire, she buckled down and she, did what was necessary to graduate because she was very, very serious about graduating and going to college.
In a county where almost 1/3 of the students never receive a diploma, Shaylinda gave her family so much to be proud of. She was a member of the junior ROTC, ran track, and loved singing with the school chorus. Her achievements were all the more remarkable considering what she was going through at home. Her mother and stepfather, Linnell and Kenneth Baker, were in the middle of an ugly divorce.
Linnell was very excited about her divorce. Not to make light of it, but it kind of gave her freedom. She was just kind of waiting for her daughter to get finished with school.
Linnell had already moved out, but even though Shaylinda didn't get along with her stepdad, she decided to stay in his home, at least for a while.
She was focused on getting through school, graduating. Her friends were out in Griffin. And I don't think she wanted to be uprooted from that. I think she found comfort in that.
Linnell would occasionally return to the house to visit her daughter. While everything seemed to be going okay, family members were still concerned. Baker had a violent temper and had served time for stabbing a former girlfriend. And it was no secret that he was very unhappy about the divorce.
He had on several occasions mentioned that he can see how a guy could just end up killing his wife. I said, that's not going to solve your problems at all.
Preston Young says he tried for months to convince his cousin to get counseling, with no luck. Still, Preston wasn't prepared for the phone call he received on May 17, 2010, just 2 weeks before Shaylinda's graduation. Kenneth Baker's father was on the line.
He was just crying and crying and crying on the phone. And I looked at the phone to see who it was, and it was my uncle. And I asked him, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's going on? What is it? And he told me that I needed to go over to Kenneth's house to make sure that Linnell and the stepdaughter were okay. He said because Kenneth had called him and told him that he had killed both of them.
Inside Shaylinda's bedroom, police found a horrific scene. The bodies of Linnell and Shaylinda. They'd been shot to death. The crime scene told detectives what had gone down. They say Shaylinda was working on her graduation invitations and chatting with her mom when an out-of-control Kenneth Baker burst in.
We believe Linnell may have been seated on the bed speaking with Shaylinda. Once the door opened and Kenneth came in, she may have stood up and faced him. We believe Kenneth shot her. She was standing in this position here, and when she fell to the floor, he stood over her and fired yet more shots into her body. Shaylinda would have been, we believe, seated at the head of the bed, her back against the backboard with the pad in her hand. The bullet went through the pad, into her upper chest. It wasn't a fatal shot. We believe she got up off the bed, maybe to flee, maybe to struggle. She fell down here between the wall and the bed, and then another shot was fired into her from this position, standing over her.
What could make a man so angry? Hard to believe, but police and family members say it was a simple text message. Linnell thought she was sending it to a male friend, but she accidentally sent it to Kenneth Baker. When Baker allegedly called his father to confess, he threatened to kill himself. But investigators believe he's still alive and on the run. When Griffin High School celebrated graduation, it was a bittersweet day.
I invite you to join with me as we remember someone who's missing this morning, someone that we thought would be here today.
In a special ceremony, Shaylinda's family accepted her diploma.
I tell the kids, Shay graduated. I said, and she decided not to walk across the stage. She flew. And she flew to the highest, went to the highest institution.
Tonight, Shaylinda and Linnell's family is praying that you can tell police where Kenneth Baker has gone, even as they pray for him.
He can run, but he can't hide. He can't run from himself, and he definitely can't hide from God.
First, I've got to say all our prayers go out to you, Linda. You're a good woman, and I agree with you what you said about Baker. He needs to turn himself in and face justice, but I'm not holding my breath that that's going to happen. That means we got to go to work. Take a good look at these pictures again. Baker weighs close to 400 pounds. He's self-conscious about all that flab, and he showers 2 or 3 times a day so he doesn't stink. Now, he's made a living as a truck driver, and cops say he likes to pick up prostitutes along the way. Now, he may still be driving this truck, a black 1996 Mazda pickup truck with Georgia tag number ARK2281. And take a closer look. You can see that he's got a big POW MIA sticker stuck on the back window. What cops say Baker did just makes me sick, and I can't wait until he's caught. If you know where this coward accused killer is hiding tonight, you've got to call our toll-free hotline, 1-800-CRIME-TV. This family needs justice, and it needs some healing.
Mr. Mueller's totally compliant. Doesn't show any resistance. He's 100% cooperative. And at some points on the video, you can see him actually holding his hand up to show the gunman that, hey, take whatever you want.
Well, there's no secret about why fast food joints and convenience stores need security cameras. Over and over again, we've shown you holdups and murders at these places that have been caught on tape. Well, tonight, Tom Morris has another example, a highly coordinated attack with a very heart-wrenching result.
In the 1980s, Nicaragua was a Central American country torn in two. The ruling communists were pitted against forces backed by the U.S. government. Civilians were caught in the middle of the conflict.
What I want to explain you, life is a very, very hard. The government telling you we fighting American people, we can't buy a toothpaste. We got to buy a bullet.
Edwin Mueller is a Mosquito Indian, and his tribe was specifically singled out for persecution by the communist Sandinista government.
In the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua, we suffer a lot.
And they consider that the Mosquito people were like their enemies, the government's enemies. So they send their soldiers into our land and to get everybody and put everybody in prison.
It was like communist country, you know, so we don't want to stay there. So we have to go somewhere else.
So in the late 1980s, the Mueller family risked their lives to escape from Nicaragua to find freedom in the United States of America.
It's like a nightmare, or that part of my life.
I passed the river between Guatemala and Mexico. Then I traveled days and nights, I don't know through where, different places.
Granted political asylum in the U.S., the Mueller family settled in South Florida and slowly built a new life in America, free from oppression.
A country that opened their arms to us, and give us the way to be stable here.
Nobody worked harder to create stability for the family in their new country than Edwin's son Ralston. As soon as Ralston arrived in 1989, he took to working 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, as a gas station and convenience store cashier.
But still, even if he was working hard, he has the time to call and say something to make you laugh or change your attitude. He was always funny with something.
You know how they say there's book smart and the street smarts, My dad will be both. He'd been working at gas stations for 20 years. He knew who was who and how things would go.
But on the night of April 30th, things went terribly wrong. Two masked, hooded gunmen suddenly rush into the Circle K in Green Acres, Florida, where Ralston's working the night shift. Both are wearing gloves and military-style BDU pants. This one, armed with an AK-47 assault rifle, immediately takes up position at the door. Now that's a type of weapon you'll rarely see used in a store stick-up.
What he wants to accomplish is the immediate fear factor. I mean business. It's basically what he's saying when he's coming in there with that rifle.
His pistol-wielding partner orders Ralston to open the register, which the experienced clerk quickly does.
Mr. Mueller's totally compliant, doesn't show any resistance. He's 100% cooperative. And at some points on the video, you can see him actually holding his hand up to show the gunman that, hey, take whatever you want.
Then the guy with the pistol orders Ralston to open the second cash register. But before Ralston can open it, the gunman with the rifle suddenly fires a single fatal shot, striking the defenseless clerk in the neck. This hard-working political refugee had escaped AK-47 toting communists in Nicaragua, only to be killed by an AK-47 toting thug in Florida.
On the tape you just watched, Ralston appears to have been shot while he was complying with the robber's orders. But that wasn't the only camera recording what went down that night. This wasn't just a homicide, it was a double homicide.
The second victim was Ralston's night shift co-worker, Michael Bennett. As you can see on this camera angle, before the robber with the pistol even approached Ralston at the counter to go after the cash, he went to the back, grabbed Michael, and pulled him up to the front of the store so the guy with the rifle could cover him. Now right here, just a split second after he shoots Ralston, the rifleman spins to his right and executes Michael Bennett with 2 quick shots before bolting out of the store.
Less than a minute, all this happened. 2 guys' lives were taken for $77.
When you see those guys covering with the mask and everything, and the gun, especially the gun, the big gun that they have, all those things make us feel a little bit of the same terror that we live in my country.
What I wanted is find out who killed my son Ralston. Before I did, I would like to see this fella, that fella I would like to see. Yes, I wanted to see who and why you killed my son.
Here's what we do know about the 2 suspects. The shooter with the rifle is approximately 5 foot 10 inches tall, slender build, race undetermined. The one with the pistol is about 5'9", and cops strongly suspect that he may be a young white male. A single bullet fired by a thug took Ralston Mueller's life and shattered this Nicaraguan family's American dream.
Today, something is missing. My heart is broken. We make a long journey. And finally, we were together as a family. But today, one is gone. He is gone.
This is such a gut-wrenching and tragic crime. This poor family's been through so much. And as Lenora said, they're missing a piece they can never get back. But what they can get and what they really deserve is some justice, and we can help them get that. Take another good look at the surveillance footage at amw.com to see if you can help cops ID these two cold-blooded murdering thugs. Remember, when you leave a tip online or call our hotline, you can remain anonymous. I guarantee you. These are two very, very dangerous, cold-blooded killers, and we got to get them off the streets. Now, I've learned about another sad twist in this case. Cops have been unable to locate any next of kin to Michael Bennett, the other man murdered in this robbery. So if you can help them with any information about Michael's family, please call our hotline right now.
Which one? Second right, second house on the right.
Dom, you want some popcorn? Don, honey, Mike sent us an email.
What's our son got to say for himself?
Oh, I don't think they had people our age in mind when they designed these bags.
Which one? Second right, second house on the right. 42807. Right there, turn right over here.
.45. I wonder who that is.
I'll get it.
North Ocean Hills 911, what's the location of your emergency?
My wife had just been shot. Somebody rang the front doorbell and then shot her.
Your wife's been shot?
Yes.
Is she breathing?
Are you breathing, Marianne? No, she's not.
She's not breathing?
Oh, no.
We had our crime scene investigators looking at the scene. They were trying to identify any parts of the scene that might help.
Age 68. She just answered the front door about 7:50.
We have to go back and try to piece together what happened.
Whoever was on the other side just started shooting. This is a mess.
Any witnesses?
We're still working on that.
It's the big question you always ask in a homicide is why it happened. And that was something that we could tell was going to be a difficult answer.
Merry Christmas.
So why would someone kill Marianne Wilkinson? This loving wife and mother had no enemies or criminal record. As the media reported on Marianne's shocking murder, residents in the tranquil neighborhood of North Richland Hills, Texas, were on edge. The next day, as Detective Roten began putting this puzzling case together, leads came pouring in.
Detective Roten, how can I help you?
I think I can help you. You see, the killer got the wrong target.
One call in particular stood out.
I think the killer got the wrong target.
The killer got the right address. He just got the wrong street. The real target also lives at 42807, only she lives at 42807 Claiborne Court.
She believed it was a murder for hire and that the killer had made a critical mistake.
Both houses were the second house on the right, and they shared the same numbers.
The caller stated the couple who shared the same street numbers as Marianne and her husband were in a contentious divorce. Several more callers then contacted the detective, all with the same theory. They believed Dennis Taylor, a wealthy businessman who owned a trucking company, had put a hit on his estranged wife, Dusty.
They'd seen threats. There had been prior incidents at the house. Their opinion is that Dennis did try to hire somebody to kill his wife, and Marianne's death was the result of that type of greed.
Detective Roten quickly reached out to Dennis Taylor.
Dennis really didn't want to talk to us at all. I mean, he didn't cooperate from the very beginning.
And Dennis Taylor, through his attorney, did not respond to America's Most Wanted's request for an interview. Cops named Dennis Taylor a person of interest, but without the murder weapon, the case grew cold. That was until Detective Roten got an unexpected holiday gift on Easter Sunday, 2008.
The gun still had the shell casings from when it had been fired last. This was an absolute break. We have the murder weapon.
But it would turn out little else. Tracing the serial number of the gun led to another dead end. And with no DNA or traceable fingerprints left by the shooter on the .357 Magnum or the shell casings, Detective Roten would need a miracle to close this case. That miracle came in the form of a new technology developed by a physicist in the United Kingdom. A technology so revolutionary, it can lift prints off of metal decades after they were left, even if the metal was wiped clean. Now, everything I heard about that new technology sounded really incredible, so I had to go see it for myself. I went to Northampton, England, about 60 miles outside of London, to meet with the man who developed this amazing crime-fighting tool. His name is Bond, Dr. John Bond.
Mr. Walsh, pleasure to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you. I'm looking forward to it. Please, tell us about this amazing discovery.
What we've actually been able to do is to enhance fingerprints, not in the sweat that you would leave behind on a surface when you normally touch it, but in the corrosion of metal that's caused by that fingerprint sweat.
Now, before I came, I pressed my thumb on some brass plates in my crime lab in the U.S., and I brought them to you for you to take a look at them.
Okay, these are the brass discs here. We can give this a go now. First, we're going to put some gloves on. Take one of your discs. Now, this brass tray here that's got the powder on that will stick to the corroded fingerprint is at the very large negative potential. When I touch the two together, then I just gently let the beads, the powder, roll over the surface of the brass disc, and the powder will only stick to where the fingerprint has corroded the metal. And already you can see the fingerprint starting to develop.
There's my print.
And there's your print, sir, yes.
Now, you wash these, so this is permanent evidence.
It is indeed. That's not the sweat that has been washed away. This is corroded onto the surface of the metal, which means it will stay and stay for a very long time.
Now, in Marianne Wilkinson's unsolved murder case, Detective Roten came here and brought you his key piece of evidence, some shell casings.
He did indeed. Detective Roten thought there might be some fingerprint corrosion on them. So we used apparatus very similar to this, where the shell casing sits on this brass shaft here, and this brass tray simply sits on top of the shell casing, so the powder can be poured onto the tray at the same time as I rotate the shell casing, and that should enable the powder then to stick to any corroded fingerprint. And at the end of that, have a look for any powder that's stuck to reveal a fingerprint, and you can see on the front there is the beginnings of a fingerprint becoming revealed.
Now, this is a huge break in the case because the conventional old-fashioned methods in the United States didn't reveal a print on that shell casing. Now we have a print.
Absolutely. We have a good partial print.
Now we've got to match that print with the shooter.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, this technology that you've invented is going to revolutionize the way cops all over the world do business. I've got to commend you on this great work.
Thank you very much indeed.
Now, unfortunately, since I visited Dr. Bond's lab, there's been no match found on the partial fingerprint Dr. Bond discovered on the shell casing. That's where you come in. If you know anything about the murder of Marianne Wilkinson in North Richland Hills, Texas on December 9th, 2007, please make that call. 1-800-CRIME-TV. That's 1-800-274-6388. And I guarantee you that you can remain anonymous.
He was openly boasting that he was on America's Most Wanted, that he was wanted for this crime. And he was using that to enhance his street rep. He felt like he was a celebrity gangbanger.
Now, I've really enjoyed reading the feedback on our stories that you've been sending to AMW.com. Here's one about Glenn Holmes Jr., the guy who cops say murdered a man after a carjacking at a fast food restaurant. Kathy Farfan from Wildemar, California writes, I cannot believe a judge would give such a cold-hearted killer freedom for a measly $5,000. No amount of money should have allowed him to be back on the street. Being a judge isn't easy, but come on, sad. Really, Kathy, sad is right on. Fortunately, we got some really good tips about where Holmes might be hiding. The cops are on it. Hopefully, we'll have some good news about that case soon. And that's not the only case that we've seen some positive new activity on. Your tips are bringing hope to a determined investigator who refuses to give up even on the coldest of cases. Bill Peters is trying to give a name to a teenage girl whose skeletal remains were found in a New Mexico desert back in 1995. She was murdered, most likely stabbed to death. As we aired the case a few weeks ago, Bill was watching from his Albuquerque home. It begins in the Albuquerque desert. He hoped your tips would give him a few new leads.
I don't care if it's just a fluke. I just need to know who she is. Once you know who she is, then you got a place where you can begin.
You didn't disappoint Bill, and you gave him more than a few leads to follow. Calls came to our hotline with the names of missing teenagers from across the country.
Hi, is this Bill Peters?
It is.
Deputy U.S. Marshal Rich Kelly was at the hotline, passing your tips along to Bill.
I'm actually really excited to speak with you tonight.
Okay, well, okay. What do we got, if anything?
Well, the majority of the leads are based around girls that may have gone missing in the time period that you're looking at. We did have a couple of leads that specifically came out of the New Mexico area.
Not only did you provide names, but also physical descriptions that fit the profile of the girl Bill has come to call Bones, until he learns her real name.
Okay. All right, when you do me a great big old huge favor, take all that paper you got and fax it to me.
Yes, sir.
It's been driving me bonkers for the last 5 or 6 years. I'm just kind of a hard-headed old Dutchman, and I don't give up too easy.
Bill doesn't want you to give up just yet either. Thanks to your calls, he's now researching the cases of at least 5 missing young girls. But he needs you to keep sending him tips until he can close this case. So check out all the clues on our website, amw.com, and see if you can help this determined cop solve one of his toughest mysteries. Well, we wish Bill Peters all the best on that case. It's a tough one. But we've already helped him solve the case of another Jane Doe found out in the desert, and I really hope we can do it again. Now, once more, it's time to hear firsthand from someone who's desperate to find a loved one in our latest My Story. A man turns to you for information about his missing brother and the tip that could give new hope to his elderly parents.
My name is Tom Miller. My brother went missing on March 12th. He went to work at the Clock Tower Resort in Rockford, Illinois from the time he left work, and he's not been seen since. The police have made us aware that they're still pursuing an open investigation. They don't have any hard leads to work on. If anybody's seen anything or saw anything at the time of Mark's disappearance, and we're hoping that this video will help jog their memory or maybe help them realize that something they saw would help the police in their investigation and help us determine what happened to my brother and where he is.
There's other people in that library surfing the web too, and just happens that one of them was looking at America's Most Wanted.
Now, I've just got to take some time out to talk about a few great captures that were in the news recently. Captures of some really bad guys we showed you right here. And I couldn't be happier about every single one of them. The first creep was my most wanted fugitive of 2006, Edmundo Cerda Anima. He was accused of killing and raping a 51-year-old woman named Alessandra Adams, a total stranger, as she walked in a park in Metairie, Louisiana. Now, this was shortly after Hurricane Katrina. It was just a horrible, senseless, awful crime. For years, the FBI had been getting tips that Cerda Anima had fled to Mexico, and that's where they finally hauled his sorry butt in. That was a great capture. And you've probably heard that the LAPD believes they finally caught a serial killer that they've been chasing for 25 long years. A man they knew only as the Grim Sleeper, Lonnie David Franklin Jr. How they caught him is really amazing. They used a technique called familial DNA to compare other samples on file to that of the Grim Sleeper. From that technique, they narrowed their suspects down to Franklin. Cops posed as waiters at a pizza joint and picked up a sample of his DNA from a cup that he used. It was a perfect match. And that's how this scumbag, linked to 10 murders, finally went down. And there's one more capture we need to talk about, a capture you played a big part in. John Lieberman's got the story.
O'clock at night, 6 days a week, it's just about my home.
Family has secrets. And Kim's involved her 14-year-old son, who'd started hanging around with a local gangbanger named Antonio Gilbert.
Everyone wants in, but don't want to do nothing to earn it.
That ain't me. I'll put the work in. Believe that.
Let's see about that.
He said, I got to do a robbery. Some local business. Can you help me out, Mama?
Well, there better be something in it for us.
Kimberly, who'd once been convicted of armed robbery, apparently knew just the place. On June 17, 2009, cops say she repaid the kindness Craig Martin had shown her by driving Antonio Gilbert and her teenage son to Craig's store.
It's game time. Don't mess this up. Get in the truck.
Here, take the money.
No, put the money in the back of the truck. You get in the back. Face down. Tie his hands behind his back. Face down.
I climbed in the truck like this right here. He said, put your hands behind your back. They tied me up. I hit him a few times and he screamed for the other one to start stabbing me. And he just kept digging and digging till finally it popped. He blinded me in my left eye.
Stabbed 21 times, Craig was left in his truck to die. But he refused to let Antonio Gilbert win. And within weeks, he was back at the general store with a cosmetic shell in place of his left eye. As for his attackers, it didn't take police long to figure out their identities. That's because they dropped a cell phone at the crime scene. One cops discovered had last been used to call Kimberly O'Neill.
All right, maybe my boy had something do with it, too.
She gave her son up first 5 minutes. And it took probably the better part of an hour to get her to give up Antonio Gilbert.
But by then, Gilbert had disappeared.
We went from obviously North Carolina, South Carolina, all the way up the East Coast, almost all the way out to Illinois, running down individual leads.
But when nothing came up,
I'm sorry, did you see him for just that moment?
Deputy Cottingham stepped up his game and came to AMW. Your tips quickly gave the U.S. Marshals a big break. Calls to our hotline told us exactly where we could find Gilbert, sort of, on Facebook.
He was openly boasting that he was on America's Most Wanted, that he was wanted for this crime. And he was using that to enhance his street rep. He felt like he was a celebrity, that he was a celebrity gangbanger.
The problem was Gilbert could be logging on from anywhere, but your tips helped narrow down the search.
Everything just kept bringing us back to Greensboro, North Carolina.
Deputies tracked Gilbert to one cheap motel and moved in, only to discover they'd missed him by less than a day. Back at Craig's General Store, that news was particularly unwelcome.
Oh yeah, there was a big level of fear in the family that he wasn't caught and that he was going to return.
But that critical tip to our hotline revealed that Gilbert hadn't drifted too far. In fact, he was literally hiding in plain sight, playing crime games on Facebook Monday through Saturday in the Greensboro Public Library.
There's other people in that library surfing the web too, and just happens that one of them was looking at America's Most Wanted.
Deputy Cottingham and the U.S. Marshals Task Force carefully began canvassing the library building, knowing that even with your solid lead, Gilbert could still slip away.
It's a very large facility. It has several floors. At one particular point, however, we were pretty confident that we saw Mr. Gilbert sitting in the library.
No surprise about what he was doing, playing his favorite crime game on Facebook. He was so immersed in it that he didn't realize his gangsta fantasy was about to come to an end.
So that's when we approached him and made the arrest.
For Gilbert, it was game over. He meekly surrendered.
You have anything to say to the victim?
It was great to find out that he had been captured. And it was nice to know that someone out there cared enough to report it.
No longer fearing his accused attacker's return, Craig is once again able to put his full energy into running the family business, grateful to our anonymous tipster who gave him the peace of mind to move on.
That one phone call made a big change in my life. And I thank him for it, and I hope the best, and God bless him.
Week marked a very sad anniversary for me and my family. It's now been 29 years since my beautiful 6-year-old son Adam was murdered. Next week, we've got the story of a man who belongs to the same horrible club that I do. He's the father of a murdered child, and his son wasn't even a year old when he was brutally killed. Make sure you're right here next week so we can get him some justice. Until then, please stay safe, stay strong.